Reddit. What is your I survived story? I'm a flight instructor. The first 500 hours of flight is called the killing zone. However, many flight instructors are hired right out of flight school, 190 hours to 250 hours depending on the path. I had maybe 200 hours at the time. I flew into a small dark cloud that was obviously a thunderstorm. Completely dumb thing to do. Within seconds, ice built up on my wings and propeller. Next thing I knew, I was falling out of the sky. Wings with ice on them no longer fly, nor did my propeller offer any power. My attitude indicator had tumbled. I had no idea of attitude, and my turn coordinator was beyond standard rate turn. Altimeter was circling fast, like 500 feet per second. We broke out of the clouds maybe 500 feet above the ground, nose down, and I was able to recover within 100 feet of crashing into the ground. I was training Chinese students at the time, and after that, they were scared of any weather. I was swimming and got caught in an underwater cave/tunnel. Had no clue where I was in relation to the entrance or exit. Zero visibility and no way I was getting out. My buddy luckily saw me struggling and somehow dragged me out just in time. 5 years ago, and I still get heart palpitations when I think about it. When I was 6, my mom, brother, neighbor, and her son all took a trip to the beach. On our way back, we were driving on the highway at about 75 miles per hour. I was in the car with my neighbor and her son. My mom was in the car behind her with my brother and his friend. Side note, my mom and my neighbor were having an affair. My mom had filed for divorce 6 months prior to this event. My neighbor turns around to ask us what kind of ice cream we wanted at the next stop. Two 16-year-olds were driving drunk on the opposite side of the highway. They came flying across the median and hit our car head on, going over 100 miles per hour. Our SUV flipped over and over again. It was a crunched up mess by the time it came to a stop. My mom watched the whole thing. Both of the boys who hit us were killed on impact. My neighbor died. My neighbor's son had a fractured skull, broken ribs, broken arms, both broken legs. He had to use a wheelchair and had pins in his legs for over a year. Apparently, my mom pulled over and pulled me out of the car. I was knocked out and had blood all over me. She thought I was dead. Then I woke up and started crying hysterically. I was fine. I wore my seatbelt because I wanted them to think I was responsible. Since I was so small and wore my seatbelt, all that happened to me was a fracture in my skull by my eye. On August 4th, 20 years had passed since the crash. My mom texted me and said that today marks 20 years since I was given back to her. Was out hiking in my woods. Saw a dead tree that looked rotten and ready to fall across the trail. So I gave it a shove so that it would fall away from the trail. It started falling, the trunk shattered on the side, and it was suddenly falling sideways. Hit another tree, bounced directly back at me. Had just enough time to take a single step to the side as several hundred pounds of tree slammed into the ground right next to me. Enough that I felt the ground shake. Would have squished me like a grape had it hit. I fell sick for about a week. Couldn't eat or drink anything without it coming back up. Unbearable cramps to the point I couldn't walk. My mom thought it was menstrual things until one night I was vomiting acid and things just stopped. Like everything stopped hurting, and I felt this ease come over me. My mom comes in and immediately panics. I guess I was white, and my eyes were lifeless, but I felt so at peace. We rushed to the hospital. They took 9 hours to see me. At this point nurses and doctors kept trying to keep me awake, but I just wanted to sleep. They ended putting me under, and next thing you know I'm awake. And I woke up screaming. They said it was impossible for me to have made it as far as I did. This was 11 years ago. Asterisk asterisk it was my appendix. It had ruptured the final night when things felt peaceful, so I was in sepsis at that point. My nephew fell in a really deep river and I jumped in after him without thinking. I'm a good swimmer, but I'm also partially blind and was in heavy clothing, not a bathing suit. So, there were a lot of problems navigating and sinking. I managed to get out with him though. His dumb bitch of a mother didn't even care when my mom told her what had happened. Just continued playing on her phone and said, "Oh, thanks." My brother put a towel around me and the kiddo and drove to my house. to fetch me a change of clothes and the kiddo some clothes from his car though, so that was appreciated. This happened to me and my wife 2 weeks ago. We're on my motorcycle, wearing helmets, stopped with our signal on, and displaying hand signals to turn left into our neighborhood. We had sat there for about 10 seconds when an SUV driver texting plowed through us at 55 miles per hour. Spent a week in the hospital and another week in rehab. I'm tied to a walker and the wife is wheelchair bound and will be for some time. It's amazing to consider how we survived. Very thankful to be here. We are finally home and it's going to be a long road. Luckily I work from home. Got into a huge fight with my ex, resulting in him taking an industrial sized zip tie and tightening it around my neck. Felt my eyes start to bulge out and the blood vessels in my face pop. I stumbled to grab a pair of scissors to cut it off. The problem was that it was so tight I had to gouge my neck with the scissors to get it off. I was horribly disfigured for weeks and kids would stare or run away from me when I was in public. Just over 5 years ago, I suffered what I later learned was a dissected aortic aneurysm. I woke up at 5 AM on a Saturday and my weekend off no less, with what felt like heartburn, and even though I was annoyed, I went back to sleep, only to wake up another hour later still feeling the burning sensation in my chest. I got up and went to sit on the couch, hoping that sitting up would help it to go away. While I was sitting up, I started to feel weak and began to get lightheaded, so I decided that it was probably more than just heartburn. So I got ready and began to drive myself to the hospital, which was about 30 minutes away. Halfway there, I became too weak to drive, so I pulled over and called 911. Somehow, I had managed to pull over in front of the local fire department, so the ambulance was there in about 2 minutes. As they were checking me over, the driver asked if there was anyone I should call. I told him to call my mother. I arrived at the hospital about 7:15 in the morning. The next few hours are a blur as I was in and out of consciousness. It felt like less than 20 minutes that I was there, but I later learned that it was afternoon before a diagnosis was made. The last thing I remember was the sound of the helicopter starting up as I was loaded in to be taken to the closest major heart trauma surgery center. I would actually find out later that no one had gotten a hold of my parents, and it was in fact the pilot that called my mom. He asked her how long it would take her to arrive, and when she said 3 hours, he just told her, "Oh yeah, she still doesn't let me forget that." So, the next thing I know, I wake up in a hospital room. No big deal. That is where I was going, so I expected that. I remember wondering what day it was. I went in on Saturday, and I knew that some time had passed, so I wasn't sure if it was Monday or Tuesday. I was trying to plan in my head when I could go back to work. I also noticed there was a birthday cake drawn on a marker board in the room, and I remember thinking that the person who had the room before me must have had a birthday. My mom came into the room shortly after I woke up and began explaining to me exactly what was going on. Turns out I had almost died and had spent the last 6 weeks in a coma. My family was told that there was a less than 5% chance that I would survive, though the surgeon would later tell me that it is closer to a 2% chance. I also found out that I had gotten very lucky with when this happened. The surgeon who saved me was a 30+ year veteran of cardiac surgery and the chief cardiac surgeon of the hospital I was sent to. He just so happened to be the one working that particular weekend. He also told me that I had the worst dissection he had seen in his career. Oh, and that birthday cake, I had woken up on my 32nd birthday. So, yeah, happy birthday to me, I guess. December 1979, Cincinnati, Ohio, The Who concert. Myself and my friends were in the front waiting for the doors to open. In the background you could hear music playing. The crowd behind us started to rush to the door. I was literally picked up off of my feet. I'm in the air about 3 feet off the ground, wedged between two bigger guys when my left leg got caught on the handrail, spreading me apart. I yelled once the pain became too much, and a guy behind me lifted my leg over, freeing me. Once inside the arena we settled down and smoked a joint. Then, when I went to relieve myself is when I saw the bodies covered up in sheets. Very thankful I was in front and not the middle. That concert is the reason we now have reserved seating versus festival seating. Slipped and fell backwards while on a hiking trail and slid 30 odd feet to hit a large boulder at the bottom of the trail. Other side of the boulder, a few 100-foot drop. After spending a year drinking myself to sleep by crying, I blacked out and my subconscious told my fraternity brothers about the rope I'd bought for myself. Been about 5-ish years and I'm still here. They helped a lot. Slipped and fell backwards while on a hiking trail and slid 30 odd feet to hit a large boulder at the bottom of the trail. Other side of the boulder, a few 100-foot drop. My friend's mom tried to beat a train in a Ford Explorer. The train slammed into the front left of the SUV and we went spiraling off into a ditch. All I could smell was gasoline and I knew our time was short. I opened the center console, grabbed the seatbelt cutter, and cut us all free. I used the blunt end of the cutter to break the glass, no percussion point, and crawled out, followed by everyone else. Since engine blocked up most of the damage, we were all pretty much fine. Turns out the reason I smelled gas is because of a bagasse rock punctured the gas tank. So yeah, came pretty close to dying and never rode with her mom driving ever again. Could have been much worse. I got stabbed for no reason by a gang in a bad part of town when I was 17. Cornered me in a dockyard by a bridge and said they were gonna kill me and throw me in the water. Kicked and sliced me and ripped the clothes off. Managed to climb a chain link fence and run off before getting a much larger knife put in me by someone who was in the process of charging at me with it. Got pics if this picks up any steam.